Okay, here's our video from the Pumpkin Harvest Festival 2 weeks ago. All right. Well, that was a fun event. If you haven't been to it, it's just our fall harvest festival that we have. We gave away a couple thousand pumpkins that day. It's an all-day event and very laid back. It was so popular we even burned out our chili roaster, so Daniel had to turn it by hand. So he had some chilies to roast. So, but anyway, that's a different event we have in the fall time. So, which way am I going? Nope. Down. Well, which way do I go? There it is. Okay. All righty. Well, welcome to our fall event. I'm not going to chastise anybody, but we planned on about 45 people, and now we have about 80, something like that. So we really, please just give us RSVP so we have an idea. We bought enough lasagna for 80 people because we love it at our office. And so we eat on that for a while. So we probably we'll be going out for pizza afterward or something. So anyway, but thank you, but please do RSVP for that. Now, coming up, I'll talk about our open house. You don't have to RSVP for that. But we do need for this just so we can have enough food for everybody. Disclosures for everything we say. Make sure you talk to your accountant, attorney, police chief, whoever else you want to find out information. Make sure that that it's right for you. Okay, agenda, I'm going to start off, and Nathan's going to talk about what happened earlier this year, interest rates, markets, and what's going on. Daniel's going to talk about investments, and election. It's bipartisan. There's no one side or the other, but just talk about the dynamics of what's going on with an election. And Jaimee's going to talk about financial planning. Okay, on your table, you have the survey and notes. Please use that. Use the survey if you want to meet with me or anybody else. Just write it down. I want an appointment with Jaimee or Daniel, whatever. Please fill that out. If you want more information about something we talk about, please write that down too. Okay, I'm going to talk about the fun part is our building. That's our groundbreaking about a year, I don't know when it was, year and a half ago. And we broke ground to build our new fancy building, and that's what it looks like pretty much today. And we're so happy that we have that new building. Much more efficient nowadays. You can get in, no handicap issues. Ann knows that. And it's just very, very easy to work with. Heating systems, cooling systems, everything else. So we'll be much more efficient and more room to wiggle around in. So there it is. If you don't know where it is, we're just right next door to the north of it. We have the new sign but our old sign will be coming down here very soon. The message board will be coming down. So we're just right next door. So if you don't know where we are, just go to the old office and look to the north. Here's Charity in our new office. We have, which one's the laser pointer? Top one. Okay, there. So we have the new fancy coffee bar over here, cookies and treats and all kinds of stuff there. Okay, we do have an open house. If you want to come and see the place, you can come anytime. We do nickel tours. We walk you around, just show you the offices and everybody. Nathan is very clean and neat, and Daniel has this technology, and mine looks like the swamp. You know, just everything ends up in my office still. So it's December 5th, 1 to 6. We encourage our clients to come between 1 to 4 because that's just kind of a quiet time to just come in, have some food, cookies, drinks, and cheer, and you can enjoy the time. And then we'll do a ribbon cutting at 4 o'clock if you want to hang around for that. Okay, so my brief talk is and I just came up with this yesterday. We've been moving from our old office to the new office. Everybody grabbed their desks and moved it over, and I did too. But then I had the joy of going down to the dungeon in our old office and pulling out stuff. As I'm pulling out boxes of files and things that we used to do, I see old names of people from years ago that are no longer with us and so on. And so I had a chance to kind of look at old technology and how we've come along. It's just amazing on what, one guy was just telling me this morning at coffee with Tim and I that he had a car, he has a car, and he wanted to listen to a book on tape, and he bought a CD, found out his car doesn't play CDs anymore. They don't even do that, And we thought just a couple of years ago, CD was like the newest technology, and it didn't last very long in those cars. And so things that I've noticed in the office is, we used to have landline phones and answer machines. And I found these old answer machines, sitting down there in the basement we've used. I had an old overhead projector. When we did slides before, we printed them on that clear plastic thing, and then we just flipped the slides through. That's how I did seminars for years and years and years. You got paper statements, and some of you get them. That's fine if you still want paper statements, and you can get them if you want them. And if you don't get them, ask us, and we can order them. But we would get, every month, the mailman would come in with a stack about 3 feet high of one tall box of everybody's statement, because we had to have your statements. This is before electronics and stuff, and Janet would punch holes in them and then collate, because it was in order by, not alphabetical order, it was by account number. She had to collate it and then go to the lateral file cabinets and put them in each folder. So every month she had to do that. That took her 3 days, 4 days for somebody to do that. We had to have your file. We didn't have computers and stuff way back then. We built portfolios by hand, just from the ground up, going through books and looking at stuff and research. And we had a little bit of computer help then, but we had to build them from the ground up. Now we have AI and all kinds of wonderful tools to help us be much more efficient. Rebalancing accounts, Janet did that way back years. She would do that by hand, each account, and it would take about half an hour to 2 hours. It depends on what account. She would rebalance them. Now we have a program called iRebal that we put it in, designed it and programmed it, and now you just push buttons and go through it, and we can rebalance, be much more efficient. We can rebalance very often and more frequently, and much help you with your performance. We did spreadsheets. We have a CRM, client relationship management, so we know everything about you, birthdays, and all this information. And it's very amazing. Back then, we just had spreadsheets. And then the one that really changed was trading. When we started back in 1998, we had to pick up the phone and say this account number, rattle it off, and say we want to buy 100 shares of ABC stock at market price. And they'd ring back right away a confirmation number, and we had to write it down, put it in a hand log, and we had all that done by paper. And that was all this stuff that we had for years and years and years, and now it's changed so much. So that's one of the reasons why we need to do the new building, because if you go and see our IT room, that thing has miles and miles of Cat6 cabling and so on like that. So it's all connected together. So that's what's changed over the years. Oops, I'm pushing the wrong one. Okay, one thing I want to talk about is the word fiduciary. One thing I've been running into we started this company in 1998, Janet and I was a broker before, and we were selling products. And then we switched over to being a fiduciary. And most of you know already what that means, but means that we work for you. We don't work for anybody else. We don't work for Charles Schwab or Merrill Lynch or any of these other big companies. We work for you, the client. And so, but what's happening is now it's becoming the in thing, and a lot of brokers or advisors are saying, I'm a fiduciary. And these are people that work for large companies, and they say, well, is the company a fiduciary? They say, no, the company's not a fiduciary, but we are. And it's like, well, are you pregnant or not? You know, you can't be sort of pregnant. And so just be careful when you're hearing about people like that are saying, oh, we're fiduciaries, we work for you, the client. It's like if you work for a big firm, you're working for the company, you're not working for the client. So I just kind of want to bring that up on the difference with us. Okay, on my shirt, I have a button. It says win. If you think back 40-some years ago, 50 years ago, there was a campaign going on, and it's kind of political, and it was win. Do you remember this? In 1974, we had, Gerald Ford was our president, and we had high inflation. And they came up with this big slogan. They tried to do a grassroots organization called Whip Inflation Now. Do you remember that? Raise your hand. Anybody remember that? Some of you. Okay, yeah, remember whipping. Well, going through the basement, I found all this old stuff, and my mom had some old campaign buttons, and I saw this, and I thought, I'm going to just wear this today to see if anybody one person mentioned the button, but no one's ever said, I thought we'd have some people that remember whip inflation now, and it was just a way to try to stop inflation. That didn't happen. Went through Jimmy Carter's days, and then through Paul Volcker and Ronald Reagan's administration, they were able to tame inflation down. So that's inflation. And so next talk we're going to talk about, didn't mean to do that, is Nathan. Nathan's going to start off, and I finished up with inflation, and Nathan's going to pick up with that. So here's Nathan Manus. Yay.
All right, so I'm not going to pick up inflation. Let's hope it doesn't pick back up. But yes, I'm Nathan Manus, one of the advisors here. A lot of familiar faces now. Met most of you at this point. In my office, they like to say that I'm the stickler, so I like to get way too far into the weeds. I'm not going to do that today, especially after the lasagna lunch. So. Where we left off last seminar, we had just come off a strong performance in the markets in 2023, and most of the conversation was around, Federal Reserve, when are they going to start lowering interest rates? Is inflation getting under control? We don't want to overheat the economy. Just kind of where do we sit in that, knowing that rates were probably going to start coming down. But there was still a lot of fear of recession. Despite the markets being up. So, with the inflation here in about, January here, we had just kind of been flat. It was like we stopped making progress on bringing inflation down. We're getting close to kind of that target of around 2 to 3%, but just couldn't quite get over that hump. And then as the year went on, as we got into, kind of the summer months, started to see inflation tick back down to where the Fed wanted to see it going. And so then the Fed was kind of forced to say, hey, maybe it's time to make moves. So as inflation went down, we expected rates to follow and go down. From last seminar, I had said, hey, we'll probably see 25 basis point cut in the summer, and I was wrong. They waited longer and did more. So I was partly wrong. And then also expected, hey, we'll see probably another 25 basis points 2 more times. So a total of 75 basis points by the end of the year. Potentially still on track for that, right? So there's 2 more Fed meetings, yet to know for sure what they're going to do. But the overall by the end of the year prediction still stays about the same. So what we're kind of wondering here is as we sit here, we know it's probably going to continue to trickle down The question is how much and how fast, right? So you see over the last couple decades, generally, when it comes down pretty fast and pretty far. I don't know that that's what we're going to see this time. I don't think we're going to necessarily see it hit the bottom here, and I don't think we're going to see these huge drop-offs. I think we're going to see a little more measured step by step. So, back to 2022, 2023, everyone's bonds were getting killed, everyone's stocks were getting killed. As rates were going up, saw the bond prices coming down. So over this past year, we've seen the rates coming down, bond prices going up, which has made a lot of you very, very happy and has made my meetings a lot more fun. So we expect to kind of continue seeing that. The question is how much longer and how rapidly. Stock market kind of shocked me, honestly. Most of my meetings I was saying, yeah, stock market will probably do well in 2024, but don't expect huge returns and expect a lot of volatility. And then it was just like, boring, except for April. April got a little rough. But most of you, if you didn't log in very often, you just look at your statement from month to month, things looked really smooth, which was kind of nice relief, for most of you. And then, currently we're kind of sitting at still a relatively strong economy. You hear grumblings one side or the other, especially election season, everyone is saying the whole world's falling apart, right? And so you hear a lot of the bad. But when you get down to the numbers, it's not as bad as some of the news channels might make it seem. Inflation is kind of in that target where they want it to be. Country's still growing economically. It's not like, oh yeah, we're growing like crazy, but we're still growing. And unemployment's still relatively low at 4.1%, right? So therein lies kind of the fear of, hey, if we lower interest rates too much too fast, we're going to overheat this economy and we're going to have inflation soaring back. So, oh yeah, the election. I don't know if you guys knew that's coming up in a couple of weeks. Just want to make sure, if you haven't seen anything about that, it is coming. Goodness, can't wait till it's over. I know we're all on the same page there. Red, blue, we all want it to be over. But I want to remind you, we're not investing in the U.S. government, and the vast majority of the government is run by the same people regardless of who wins this election, right? So good, bad, or otherwise, yes, the president has power. Yes, this election matters. Yes, get out and vote. But we've got to look at the election from an investment standpoint, right? So when we look at the companies, what we really care about, they don't care that much one way or the other. Sure, there's companies that are, all voting Democrat or all voting Republican, but they're all over the place. And these are massive companies, right? And a lot of these big companies don't care, pretty 50-50. They don't care who wins the election. What they care about is knowing what to do after. They want the predictability of the election being over, saying, okay, I know how to handle Kamala's policies. I know how to handle Trump's policies, right? That's ultimately what matters. These companies know how to play the game, right? I think most of us in this room would agree there's a lot of shady things that go on in Washington, D.C. That is not necessarily bad for your investments. We can talk about bad for other things, but for your investments, right? So they're going to figure it out. And I know it's scary because you look at our government, and again, red, blue, doesn't matter. We're like, man, we got a lot of idiots out there. What in the world are we doing? Is this the best we can do? Is this the best we have in the United States? No, it's not. No. Our best and brightest are running the companies that you're invested in, right? So have some solace in knowing that the really smart people out there are going to make the right decisions based on who's in office, and they're going to figure it out. So another thing we often, tend to forget is, even if the U.S. isn't doing well, over a quarter of the revenue of the largest 500 companies in the U.S. comes from overseas. they have avenues to increase sales overseas if the US isn't doing well. Again, they know how to figure it out. So, with the rate cuts, markets tend to do fairly well after rate cuts, right? Now, there's exceptions, of course, when rates are cut because things are going so horrible that they have to cut rates and try to prop things up. But if you notice on this chart, markets are generally up within a year after the first rate cut. And if you notice, when markets are up in the first 3 months, and I know this is small, but in the first 3 months, when it's positive, generally really strong returns in the markets a year later, right? We're on track to have positive returns in the first 3 months. It's too early to know, but just know that that is a good sign for where things are headed. These companies want cheaper debt. Rates coming down makes it easier for them to expand their companies. So, a lot going on here. Just want to point out that none of you are all in on the S&P 500. At least I hope not, right? Not if we're managing your money. You're diversified. You're spread across all sorts of different companies, industries, bonds, this, that, and the other, right? And so, yes, from year to year, we see these big performers and these poor performers. Doesn't mean they're going to come around the next time. Doesn't mean we don't need some of that stuff in the middle. We're, and you could look at kind of gold and Bitcoin and then, low here on your bottom performers. There's a lot of similarities as to why those were top and bottom performers. I'm not going to dive into that. I know Daniel would absolutely love to dive into that conversation, but we're not going to go too far there. So a lot of you have a lot of money that you're more cautious with. You're saving for a home, or just, hey, this is my next couple of years of expenses. I want to be really cautious with it. Money markets have been an awesome tool for that. And with the liquidity, they've come down. They were at 5.25 not all that long ago, but still, historically, that's really good. Over the last decade or so, it's been significantly under 2%. Anyway, so still really good return in the money market, and CDs being a little less. Now, what we're looking at is as the rates continue to lower and we see those CDs and money markets come down in what they're returning, we've got to start having that conversation of getting into the markets a little more and taking on a little bit of an incremental risk to be able to get still those 4 or 5% returns. But what we're looking at, yes, the election matters, but what really matters is where we are in the cycle and where we're headed next, right? So we know rates are likely going to continue to lower, with the caveat that anything could be happening while we're standing here and we have no clue, and all this could get blown up in a second. But rates should continue to come down. That will cause the economy to heat up. Inflation will creep back in. No, not tomorrow, but over time it's going to happen again, and then they'll have to increase rates again, right? So what we are doing at El Dorado is really paying attention to that, right? And the president will have an effect on that, but that's what matters. So let me give you something we can be certain about. Nothing. Uncertainty. That is the one certainty, right? So again, bringing it back to, we have to stay diversified. We cannot go all in and place all our bets based on one outcome or another. But anyway, I'm going to bring up a guy that wants to talk more about predictions. Daniel, come on up.
People do not make good decisions when they are drunk. And people do not make good decisions when they are in a panic. If you guys can do me a favor and get on your survey notes and write, please add little shooter bottles of bourbon on the middle of the tables, that would be great. It would make this go a lot smoother for everybody. The reason that I'm talking about the election the way that I am today is because my job is to help people not panic, okay? Hopefully no one has ever been drunk and panicked at the same time. Lord knows what would happen. What I'm going to be doing today is taking the fear, taking the anxiety, taking the doubt and the uncertainty out of the election. And the reason why we're doing that is that if I can keep everyone from panicking when it comes to your portfolios, when it comes to your investments, when it comes to your financial goals, when it comes to your overall financial plan, you guys do better. Jim, Jaimee, and I have seen it over and over again. People derail their financial goals and financial plans by freaking out. And that's what I'm trying to help everyone prevent, okay? So we're going to look at Professor Lichtman's keys to the White House, and we're also going to be looking at electionbettingodds.com. If you guys want more details, go on YouTube, watch our previous seminar back in the spring of this year. I go into these in more detail. You can also do your own research, okay? And you're going to find out why I'm using these. The big overarching message that I want you guys to remember is that irregardless of who wins, Trump or Harris, when it comes to your financial plan, when it comes to your financial goals, when it comes to your investments, it does not matter. And I got plenty of data to show you at the end of this that proves my point. So once we get through these keys and we get an idea of what's going to happen in November, basically I'm going to show you guys how our investment principles and our investment philosophy doesn't change. And I'm also going to give you some insight of what we're already doing, okay? Oh, let me jump back. Before you all start coming after me with pitchforks and torches, just know that I'm unaffiliated, I'm independent. My political philosophy is very simple. This is just me being in finance for as long as I have. There is no red, there is no blue. There is the state and there is you. That's the closest thing to Dr. Seuss you're all going to get from me today. Vladimir Kellis-Borak, gentleman on the right, is a mathematical geophysicist and seismologist. His job was to predict earthquakes. He got in contact with a history professor from American University named Alan Lichtman, and what they basically did was they took 120 years of election data from Abraham Lincoln to Ronald Reagan, and they figured out, come on, clicker, there we go. We figured out how to measure political stability versus political earthquake, and that's what the keys to the White House are. Professor Lichtman's been doing this since Ronald Reagan. We're going to talk about its accuracy here in a second. But the keys to the White House are very simple. 13 true or false questions, 5 or less false answers, there is political stability. 6 or more false answers on these keys, there is political earthquake. Okay, now, he's accurately called every election since Ronald Reagan. And in case you are skeptical, he accurately called Donald Trump in 2016, who was a complete political outsider, and he called Joe Biden in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I thought Professor Lichtman was wrong in 2020, but sure enough, I think the keys have been battle tested enough. So just to kind of help before we jump into the keys, true answers help the incumbent party, which in this case is Kamala Harris and the Democrats. False answers help the Republicans, which is Donald Trump and the challengers, okay? So 6 or more false answers equals a Trump victory. So let's go through these one by one. I'm going to start on the far left. Party mandate. Did the incumbent party in 2022, the Democrats, win more seats in the House of Representatives than they did in the previous midterm elections? Democrats did better than what most analysts were predicting, but it wasn't enough for them to secure control of the House. That key is false. We're going to go to the other side, uncharismatic challenger. What I like about these keys is that only 2 of these keys focus on the personalities of the candidates themselves. It actually goes through a whole big picture approach. The thing with Donald Trump, and that's what this key is about, the uncharismatic challenger key, is that he has a very narrow specific audience that he targets, okay? He's not a Ronald Reagan, he's not a Barack Obama. Both those guys have very wide appeal to the masses. So that key is true. Now, the thing with Kamala and the thing with Professor Lichtman, he is a registered Democrat, and he will tell you the hardest thing is to keep his own bias out of this. But even though he likes Kamala Harris as a Democrat, she is not an Obama, she is not a Ronald Reagan. She does not have that broad appeal to the masses, and so that key is false. And according to him, he doesn't see anybody in the Democratic Party that meets that key. I'm going to lump these 2 keys together: no foreign military failure and major foreign military success. Here's the thing about these keys. War is hell. War is fluid. Anything can happen at the drop of a hat, okay? Now, because it is very fluid, we're going to touch back on these two keys when I get through everything else, okay? And there's a big reason why. According to Professor Lichtman, when Vladimir Putin and the Russian army invaded Ukraine, Biden and the president was able to, or Biden and his cabinet were able to get the whole Western coalition of nations support to keep the invasion at bay in Ukraine. So he gets a true answer for that. You may have a military success, but that doesn't mean you don't have a failure. Israel is the size of, New Jersey? And all that President Biden had to do was send in the 2nd Marines in the Mediterranean Sea and cause a ceasefire. He wasn't able to do that. The conflict's been going on for well over a year. It's just turned into a humanitarian crisis. There's a lot of bloodshed. So he gets a false answer on that key. Ooh, my favorite key. Oh, this is my favorite, and you're going to understand why. Daniel, does Hunter Biden and his laptop and the gun charges have any bearing on Biden from the scandal perspective? No. The scandal is turned false if the president or someone in his cabinet is roped up in an act of fraud or corruption. That is an impeachable offense. Now, I'm going to give you guys a very clear, easy to understand example, but before I start, do you guys remember Saturday Night Live? Remember when it was fun? Having an extramarital affair, as morally questionable as that is, and a surefire way to end you up in divorce court, is not a crime. What got Bill Clinton in trouble was when he walked into a civil disposition, raised his right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. Now he's under oath. And then he was asked the $1 million question, and of course, as we all remember, he lied. Our lawyer friends in the room will tell you if you lie under oath, that is called perjury. That was the impeachable offense that turned this key against the Democrats in the 2000 election. Same thing would have happened to Richard Nixon with the whole Watergate scandal. If he had not retired early, he would have had plenty of scandal pinned on the Republicans. So, Republicans have tried very hard to pin something on Joe Biden. They have not been able to do so because of that, and because also that Hunter Biden and his whole situation doesn't have any bearing on the presidency. This key is true. There's no scandal. No social unrest. This is an easy one. If you guys remember 2020, all the riots, the cities on fire, the chaos, that is a textbook example of what it looks like when there is widespread social unrest. So far, we haven't seen anything like that in this current campaign season. Not going to speculate, but if Donald Trump's head was just tilted just a few inches the wrong direction, we might be in a completely different situation. Thank God that didn't happen. But yeah, we're not seeing any kind of widespread social unrest like we saw in 2020. So that key is true. Major policy change. As important as it is to have military success, you also need to have legislative or policy success here at home. So has Joe Biden, since he took reins of the presidency, implemented a lot of policy change? Well, let's do a quick little assessment. He he undid all of Trump's executive orders. He put the U.S. back on the Paris climate change accords. He was able to pass the Build Back Better plan. He was able to pass the CHIPS bill. He was even able to pass the ironically named Inflation Reduction Act. So because he's had a lot of victories on a legislative front, that key is true. Okay, we're going to shift gears. We're going to focus on the left-hand side now. No primary contesting, incumbent seeking re-election. Real quick question: has anyone ever did anyone watch that first debate between Trump and Biden? Anyone? Anyone brave enough? Okay, so I wasn't too surprised. I was not surprised at all at the debate performance. What blew me away was the mainstream media's reaction to Joe Biden. I have never, in my years, and I'm pretty sure everyone else here can say the same thing, I have never seen the mainstream media turn on the president like that before. It was really crazy. And this is kind of going back to what I said earlier. Drunk, Panic, no bueno. Biden's debate performance spurs Democratic panic about his ability to lead party against Trump, according to the Associated Press. My personal favorite's Politico, WTF. Panic Dems start looking for alternatives to Biden. What the fudge? But the reason why the incumbent seeking re-election and the no primary contest key is so important, it's a lot easier to re-elect someone that's already president than it is to replace him with somebody else, okay? According to Professor Lichtman, no incumbent party has ever won re-election with both these keys false. But you can get away with only one of them being false. Back in 1988, when Professor Lichtman accurately called George Bush Sr., even though Ronald Reagan was not seeking re-election because he termed out, because at least a 2/3 majority of delegates in the Republican Party supported Bush, they were able to salvage the primary contest key. And that's exactly what happened with the Democrats. Joe Biden announced that he was not running anymore. Because the majority of delegates supported Kamala, they were able to salvage the no primary contest key. So, all right, final stretch. No third party key. RFK Jr., it wasn't that I didn't want him to run because I had anything against his policies. I just didn't want him to run because he's a Kennedy, and they don't have the greatest track record of keeping themselves alive. I'm just being honest, okay? Now, if a third-party candidate like an RFK Jr. was polling at 10% or more, then this key would go false. But since RFK Jr. wasn't polling all that much and he endorsed Donald Trump and dropped out of the race, that key is true. Okay, final stretch. Long-term economic key looks at the real per capita economic growth. So whenever you see the word real, that means it's accounting for inflation. So the real per capita growth of the, real per capita growth of Biden's term equal or exceeds the mean growth of the previous two terms. Okay, that's one economic key. The other economic key is the short term. Are we in a recession during the campaign? Professor Lichtman is not an economist. He doesn't want to be an economist. So what he does is that he goes off of the National Bureau of Economic Research. Until these guys tell us that we are in a recession, we are then in a recession according to the keys. This is the part where I get to rant. Strap in. The thing that I run into a lot when I talk about the economy with people is that they sit there and they tell me, oh, we're in a recession, we're in a recession, we're in a recession. I'm like, okay, all right, well, do we have 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP? Well, no. Is the stock market relatively high and your account statements are all doing good? Like, yeah. Is unemployment relatively low at 4.1%? Well, yeah. Okay, well, has your real estate crashed at all? I cannot sit here and tell you guys. I mean, there's maybe one economic indicator that I can pull out of my back pocket that would suggest we are in a recession, or that we're in the beginning stages of a recession. I just don't see it. And let me tell you why. How many of you guys remember Silicon Valley Bank from last year? Everyone heard about the bank in California started to crash. Let's play a Monte Carlo situation, or a simulation. Let's just do this. Silicon Valley Bank was allowed to crash, burn, and die, okay? That was the catalyst needed to create a ripple effect across the whole economy. People start losing their deposits. Banks start falling. People start losing jobs. Real estate, bond market, stock market, everything starts crashing down. Starbucks and Kroger and all these food companies have no reason to lower prices because everyone's still willing to pay, let's just say $12 for a cup of coffee at Starbucks. Until we see that recession and all that pain and suffering works its way throughout the economy and sucks all that money out, we're not going to see prices come down. Now, the annual rate of inflation has come down, but prices are still relatively high than what they were before COVID, okay? Because the Federal Reserve printed money out the back door, keeping Silicon Valley Bank and all the other banks solvent, that's what's basically propping up our economy. Now, with that being said, strong short-term, strong long-term economy are true, according to Professor Lichtman, the predicted winner is Kamala Harris. Now, what about election betting odds? Okay, I've told you guys before, if you guys remember John Stossel and Maxim Lott, they take betting data on our elections, they pull them together in an easy website for everyone to see. So the reason that we like bettors than we do like polls is because you have a way bigger sample size than you do with polls. A lot of these bettors are cutting out their biases. Bettors think big picture. They ask the real questions and not just pointed questions from the pollsters. And they actually put their money where their mouth is, which is something that I appreciate. They have no incentive to lie. This graph right here is just showing you just kind of like long-term what the bettors have done accurately, and it's pretty accurate. Now, what are the bettors saying? Well, as of this morning, with $2.5 billion in bets, that's a lot of money, $2.5 billion in bets, Donald Trump has a 60% chance of winning. Now, hold on, Daniel, controversy. We have Professor Lichtman's keys telling us that Kamala is going to win, but you're now showing us that the bettors are going to predict Trump. Let me help you understand what this data is saying. If we ran a presidential election 100 times, okay, Kamala versus Trump, over and over again 100 times, we can expect Trump to win 60% of the time. That still means, however, he has a 40% chance of losing. Okay? Even the greatest poker players in the world have a bad hand from time to time. And we saw this back in 2016. 2016 betting odds gave Hillary Clinton over 80% odds of winning. It wasn't until halfway through election night that the odds flipped. Now remember, Professor Lichtman accurately called Trump in 2016. So with all that being said, what I expect to happen, halfway, during, even before now and then, we will see the odds on election betting odds flip to Kamala's favor. We will see Kamala Harris win the election. Now, as something I want to reiterate, what does this mean for your investments? What does this mean for your financial goals? What does this mean for your overall financial plan? Nothing. It does not matter. Okay. I get asked the question, Daniel, who does better for the economy, Democrats or Republicans? Well, if you go back since Jimmy Carter, GDP growth on average overall goes up 2.68%. If you break that between Republican presidents and Democratic presidents, Democrats do good. If you look at inflation, overall is up plus 4%. Republicans do better on inflation than Democrats. Real estate prices, it goes to real estate average returns. I can't even freaking talk. I need alcohol. Real estate average returns typically does better under Democrats. Real inflation-adjusted net worth do well under Republicans. So it's like pick your poison. And this is kind of the point that I try to tell people all the time. It really doesn't matter from an economic and from an investment standpoint. Irregardless of who wins, Donald Trump, even if the keys are wrong, even if the bettors are right, it doesn't matter because both Trump and both Kamala Harris have a $35.7 trillion question that they have to ask. The reason why I throw this number in your guys' face a lot when we have these seminars is because 2/3 of this national debt is made up of Social Security and Medicare. So is the government going to raise taxes? Well, that's unfavorable. Is the government going to let your Social Security benefits get cut in half? Well, that's sure as heck unfavorable. What do? They're just going to print more money. That's what I expect, what they've always done. So just to give you guys perspective of what this means, the three largest line items on the congressional budget, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and our military defense spending, our interest rate expense on our debt is bigger than what we spend on our military. What do? Where do we go? How do we help you navigate this? Okay, we've had all these presidents from both parties, and we still got this big problem that keeps rearing its ugly head. If you guys remember the 1970s and 1980s, we expect inflation to be not like low and slow and to the point. We expect it to be a little bit more jumpier, more sporadic, more touchy, if that's another way to put it. With that being said, with what we're seeing at the national debt, with what we're seeing with the money printer, I mean, the Fed lowered the interest rates. That's just step one. Eventually, they're going to have to print money and figure out how to inject that into the financial system. So we expect inflation to be more jumpier. Where was I? Yeah. And then with that being said, we are already slowly moving back into Treasury inflation-protected securities, or TIPS. If you guys have been with us since COVID, you remember me talking a lot about TIPS before. The other thing that we're also talking about is, or what we're doing is, we're also adding broad basket commodities, not just gold, not just silver, oil, soy, wheat, corn, sugar, aluminum, diesel, stuff like that, stuff that we need to use every single day to survive as a society. So we're already adding TIPS, and we're also adding broad basket commodities. When we get to the spring seminar next year, I plan to talk more about this in more detail. What do I see in the economy? What do we see with the investments? All that kind of stuff. Gold, as Nathan mentioned in the back, is up 31% for the year, but my Bitcoin, oh yes, my Bitcoin is up 60%. And I'm going to give you guys a lowdown of what we expect to happen in the next couple years. So stay tuned for the spring seminar. Now, before I bring up Jaimee, we wanted to show you guys this video.
Whoa, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are two people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's not enough left to do, is there?
Hello? Hey, don't worry about it. I'll fix it in a second.
He said he can fix it. All right. All right. That's more like it. He says he can fix it.
All right, thanks for that quick video break. I love this. This makes me laugh, and I've seen it a bunch of times. So, thanks for indulging. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. All right, hi everybody. I'm Jaimee. I'm here to bring this ship home. I am our office's certified financial planner, federal retirement consultant, I don't know, everything else. Small office, lots of hats. But the reason I put that video up there, aside from it being very entertaining, is we talked about a lot of things today. We talked about big things that I like to think about as like an escalator, right? They're moving along regardless, right? And you hop on the escalator and sometimes something breaks. And I'm not saying our economy is going to break or the election's going to break everything, but if something breaks and you're on that escalator, you don't have to be like those two standing there screaming for help, waving your hands, just hanging out. There's things that you can do. You can take steps forward to get off the escalator, right? You're not stuck, you're not subject to things like that breaking. And I'm here as your handy-dandy mechanic that was here to help fix the problem. And I'm not going to get stuck on that escalator either. So let's talk about what things we can do to fix. What things can you do you have control over? So things that you have control over, I wanted to take a step back and say, hey, financial planning is something you can control, right? You can control you. And financial planning is kind of one of those jargon words that you love to say, financial planning, and you think budgeting, and you're like, ugh. But what does it actually mean? I like to think about it in the kind of scope of you're going to take a trip. But if you're going to take a trip, you're not going to say, well, I'm going to hop on a bus. That's not your first thing that you do, right? Or I hope not. Maybe you're really spontaneous and you do. But if you're going on a trip, usually you got to think about your plan. Where are you going on the trip? Or in financial planning, where are you headed? What are your goals? So think about where are you going, but it doesn't stop there. You don't say, I'm going here, and then just pick a vehicle. You got to say, okay, how am I getting there? If you're going from Montrose to Florida, there's a lot of routes you could go, right? You could go directly, you could go all around the US, you could go anything else. So how are you getting there, right? That's the process part of this. And then finally, we get to the what are you taking to get there? What vehicle are you flying? Are you driving? Are you walking? And everybody has the ability to pick where they're going, how they're getting there, and what method, what means are you taking to get there. Another way to put it is if you go to see your doctor, you're not going to walk in the door and they're going to say, here's a prescription, right? Or I sure hope not. Right? You're going to talk to the doctor and give them more details. You're going to devise a plan. You're going to get a process on how you're going to get there. So, starting with plan, as I said, where are you going? What are your goals? And every single one of you in this room is different. You don't have the same goals. There might be things that are similar, but nothing's the same. So when you think financially, what are your goals? Sometimes that's, hey, I want to retire. Well, most people want to retire, right? Some earlier, some later. Some want to fund their children's education. Some want to protect against risk or protect their spouse against something happening to them. So you've got to really take some time to think through what your goals are. And if you're not quite sure, I'm happy to help you help have that conversation, ask probing questions to help you figure out what are your goals, right? Maybe your goal is to have more freedom in life. All right. So as part of that advice, right, there's a lot of AI coming out, a lot of tools online. There's a lot of tools online, right? And they can be good, but a lot of times it's you plug the info in, result comes out. Whose life is that straight? Whose life is that simple? If your life is that simple, I want to live your life. But life is messy, and good and bad messy, but there's a lot of life in here. There's ifs, thens, buts, family dynamics, extra risks, all sorts of things. So yeah, algorithms are great. There's a lot of awesome tools, but life doesn't fit in the cookie cutter box, right? So our goal as financial advisors is to help factor in the real life. So as part of the financial plan, we factor in the real life. What tools do we use to help factor in the real life? One is being a certified financial planner. So as I said, I've been one for like 9 years. And Mr. Nathan, is sitting to take his test in 2 weeks. So send your thoughts, send your prayers. It's a lot. And why is being a CFP so important? To get your certified financial planner, you have to have prior education, but then you have to take a year's worth of classes, just learning more things. And I'm not saying as an advisor you don't know things already, but you have to take all these classes and pass every class, and then you have to, culminating in a long 6-hour test to make sure you know your info, right? So that's why it's a good tool. That's what helps us factor in the real life, is all this extra expertise and tools that we have taken to learn to be able to help you figure this out. There's also a lot of continuing education and ethics requirements with that. The other tool that we've had financial planning software since we started, pretty much. Well, maybe not since we started, but for a long time, right? We've had some for a long time. But recently we said, hey, I think we need to upgrade to something new. We have a new financial planning software. It's very comprehensive. It's very helpful. And if you do not have a plan and you'd like, let us know. Nathan and I have really been diving into it, and it's been a really cool tool. I have a video that it'll show you a few glimpses of what it looks like. But this is just a quick little sheet right here that we love to play with. And it basically says, hey, here's your goals, right? There's the plan, your goals, where are you headed? And then here's the little triggers that you can pull in between to say, how do I get there? So here's a little video.
We all want to achieve our financial goals, but sometimes we're not sure how to reach them. We are here to help put you on the path to financial success so you can get where you want to be. Our holistic approach gives you a better look into your finances so you can invest, save, and pay down debt intelligently. We help you plan for retirement, save for college, review your portfolio, optimize your Social Security and tax strategies, and much more. Our cutting-edge technology allows you to log in and view your updated financial information whenever you want, with all your accounts in one place. Monitor your progress so you can feel more confident about your financial future and focus on what's important in your life. Don't wait. Reach out and change your financial future today.
So that's just a quick little glance into what it could be. Some subjects obviously impact some clients more than others. Like I said, we all have our own goals. We're all going on our own different trips. So this accounts for that. So if you're interested, if you don't have a plan in this software and you want one, write down on your survey sheet at the end and we'll work on building them out. Because of Nathan's exam that's coming up, and it takes a little time to really make sure we have a good plan, it might take a little longer than normal because there's like 90 of you here. But if you want to do that, we are happy to create it. It's an awesome dynamic tool that we can update and change as your life changes. Because just because we put something into it a year ago does not mean that your life is manifesting the exact same way. Or doesn't mean that the economy is manifesting the same way. So, kind of with that, a benefit of having an advisor or consultant or coach is you can be really smart, and a lot of you are really, really smart, but on your own, sometimes you have a blind spot that you know your situation so well that you don't necessarily think outside the box. So the benefit of having an advisor or consultant is just to help catch any blind spots. We're here to help provide you feedback to help you get you to the goals that you want. All right, we're on to the middle part of our pyramid, the process. So where are we going? Now, how are we getting there? What's the methodology? And boy, there's a lot of methodologies for each goal. I'm going to shout out a few, not spend too much time, because if I get in depth on any one of these, we're going to be here until 5, maybe till tomorrow. Does anybody want to stay that late? So if you're wanting to retire, hopefully you have an investment strategy, right? An investment process. If you're wanting to buy a vehicle, hopefully you have a budget to get you to having money for a vehicle. And all of these different ones, if you're wanting to protect something, your kids or your spouse if you pass away, hopefully you have created a process via an estate plan. And these are all different, right? They can be different for each person depending on your goals, but this is the middle part. So now I'm going to hit 3 kind of areas of the process that just tend to be general tips. So we have this tax cuts expiring that I mentioned last time. At the end of next year, the tax cuts that were put into place are going to expire. So see, hey, in 2026, they're going to potentially revert back. This is an unknown. Nathan talked about what are we certain of? We're uncertain of uncertainty. But we're trying to take some data. So what this is showing right here is there's a potential that we might see tax brackets increase maybe 3%-ish per bracket. That's an approximation. But with that, there's different things we can do. We could do a Roth conversion. Now, that's not right for everyone, but it's a nice tool, a nice process if your goal is to help save on tax or have extra funds left over. This is a potential idea. So if you want, without getting into the nitty-gritty of it, if it's something that we haven't talked about that you are just curious, does it make sense for you? Put it down on the sheet, ask us. Okay, another process. If you want to be financially secure, you don't want to lose your money to scams, right? We see this way more than I ever want to, so that's why I threw it in. because I don't want anybody to get hit with scams. I put some really common scams up here. The ones that tend to hit our clients the most or tend to be the most prevalent, tech support scams. If you see something pop up on your computer or your technology and says, you have a virus, please call this number, or please let this person remote into your computer. Don't do it, turn it off. Call us if you have questions. We're happy to help out with any of this. Or, just call somebody if you have questions, but we're here to always help on that. Okay, little story with this grandparent scam. I have a family member that actually almost fell prey to this. And what it is these dang scammers are so tricky, and Daniel said you don't make good decisions when you're drunk or afraid. They prey on fear. They know how to ramp up the fear in your body. So they call and they try to say, oh, your grandchild or your niece or whatever, they're in jail. And you need to give us money right now, and they need to get out. And you have a gag order. You can't say anything to anyone. And what does that do? That isolates you. You feel like you can't say anything to anyone. And then you're like, oh gosh, I got to get him out. And then you say something like, oh gosh, is it Jaimee? Is Jaimee in jail? And they say, yeah, it is. So you just gave them their information to help them continue on their story. So if anything like that happens, if they say there's a gag order, there's probably not. Call us. They really want their money, so they're going to try to not let you hang up. Government entity, if the IRS or Social Security calls you, it's probably not legit. They usually send you a letter. So, and if it is them, just say, I don't believe it. I'm scared. I want to protect my information. Hang up. Call them on a verified number to check. And this last one, because these are driving me crazy. Who's getting spam text messages out the wazoo? Some are elections, some are just crazy spam ones. I think they're both the same. Like, stop texting me. So just I wanted to explain what's happening with some of these, because I always couldn't figure it out. I got a text message the other day, and it said, hey, I made chicken for dinner. Do you want to come over? And I was like, who's making me chicken? And what I realized, it's a spam text. So sometimes you'll get texts from people. They'll just try to put a random comment out there, or hey, how are you? But you have no idea who it is. Usually it's a scammer, especially with smartphones. You can usually put, number, like put a contact information into the phone. So if it's unrecognized, that's a trigger 1. If you've never talked to them before, trigger 2. And what they're trying to do is just engage you in conversation. They're trying to figure out is there a real person at the end of this phone number. So if you respond back, even if you say stop, like reply stop, that lets them know, hey, there's somebody here. And what that does, it doesn't mean you're going to lose your money just because you responded to text. What it lets them know is there's a target, and let's keep trying. So if you reply to it, you're going to get more. And their end goal is always to get money. So their goal is to, hey, build a relationship, and hey, I need money, and have you send a gift card or whatever. So those are just some random scams. But anyway, anytime anything seems fishy, call a family, call a friend, call us. We're here to help. We don't want you to have any fraudsters steal your money, because that's really going to impact your financial freedom. All right. Last one before I get to the top of our pyramid is if you have a goal of enjoying your retirement and enjoying a simple life, or helping your spouse. Maybe you manage all the money and you want to help your spouse if something happens to you. Simplify. And here's a good example that might help you remember to simplify. So y'all here, don't put your eggs in one basket, right? We were talking about that's a benefit of diversification. Don't put all the eggs in one basket. Firmly believe that. We've heard Nathan, Daniel, Jim all talk about it. But you might want to get all of your chickens on the same farm. And what do I mean by that, right? I'm not saying put all your money in Bitcoin, Daniel. I'm just kidding. I'm not saying put all your money in one place, but what I'm saying is bring them all to the same farm. We had a married couple that they came in and they said, hey, this is our goal, right? This is their destination. They want to simplify. And the husband said, I want to do this because if something happens to me, my wife is going to be lost. And so what we did, we got all the chickens on to El Dorado Acres. We brought them all in. And when something actually did happen to the husband, the wife came in and she was crying, right? Because it's hard. But she said, gosh, I'm so glad that we got all of our chickens on the same farm. It's making a hard time, not as hard as it would have been. So That's just another process you can put in place to get to your goals. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Last but not least, the process, or the product. Oh, goodness, I don't know where I am. The product, a lot of times, major news medias head right to the product. A lot of books head right to the product. A lot of magazines. Hey, here's the top investment for you. Well, how do you know who's good for me, right? An investment that's good for me is going to be very different than one that's good for Jim, right? We have a big age difference. And I'm not going to read this. If we both pick up this magazine, it says it's good for me. Or he's going to read it, it's good for me. So a lot of times they try to sell you right on the product without even understanding your needs or anything. And there's a lot of products out there. Oh, I was just saying we finished those. So I'm not even going to shout them all out. There's a lot of products out there. And they all have a time and a place. And they can fit into your financial picture, right? There's a ton. We incorporate a lot of these. Almost all of these we'll use at some point or another. But it's really important to know where you're headed, how you're getting there before we even start trying to devise what products do we need, right? As Jim said, we're fiduciaries, and that means we're not out here trying to hawk and sell a bunch of products to make a good commission. We're taking a step back and saying, what's our plan? What's our process? Now it's time to get to the product. Now it's time to say we're using tips. Now it's time to say we're using commodities, et cetera, et cetera. And there are so many of these out there. If you're out there trying to sort it yourself, you're going to feel like this, right? So many investments. That's one thing that we really excel at. We're here to help you devise a plan, but we're here to help you sort through all the junk. All right. Less media, more happiness. I'm leaving you with this. We know in 2 weeks we're going to have a lot of media trying to bombard us, even via text messages, right? We have a lot trying to come in. What I would like to finish with is we're here as your advisors. Let us consume the media for you. Let us digest all that information, all those products to say, what makes sense for your plan, and your plan, and your plan? We're here to consume this. You don't need to consume this. Their goal is to stress you out. And really quickly, last really, really short story. Daniel and I went to Oregon in August, and he said, I got to check and see what's happening with the news, with the markets. And of course, it's when they were going crazy. We had 5 minutes of the market news on. And in 5 minutes, my heart was beating. And I was like, I'm stressed. Do we need to sell it all? And I knew not to do that. I know. I've done years and years of don't panic. But they are so good at saying the right thing to make you question, are you doing it right? So whether it's political, market, et cetera, yes, be informed, but less media, more happiness. Let us take on the media for you, right? So, to conclude, fill out your surveys. Any questions, write them down. If you want a financial plan, jot it on there. Any future seminar topics, we love to hear it. Any suggestions, I love feedback, and I'll read it all. A few years ago, somebody said more Reese's, so there's a lot of Reese's out there. Thank you so much for coming, you guys. We appreciate you.